Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, the official translation of One Piece chapter 1007 is out. You guys know how we do the video. Talk about the official translation compared to the fan translation. Note any difference. Talk about literally anything at all. And then round out the video with comments from you guys. So there's two translation things that I want to talk about in this chapter. First off, in the fan translation, it was somewhat ambiguous as to whether or not Cypherpole was saying that Vegapunk used Kaido to extract DNA in order to create the artificial devil fruit. The fan translation was once when Kaido was being held captive by the Navy, Vegapunk used his lineage factor to try and synthesize an artificial devil fruit. The implication was here, but it didn't outright say it. The official was very much less ambiguous. Speaking of Kaido, back in the days when the Navy had held him captive, Vegapunk extracted Kaido's bloodline elements and used them to create an artificial devil fruit. This translation doesn't really determine how I interpret the line, but I like clarity. At the very least, the official puts its foot down in regards to what I actually think was being said here, even if the line in Japanese is actually supposed to be ambiguous. Somewhat. I also thought the official did a really good job of emphasizing and explaining Momonosuke's reaction to what Shinobu said in the chapter. Momonosuke muses, "Everyone thinks too highly of me. I'm so stupid and frivolous and weak and foolish. I hate myself." Shinobu says, "No, Lord Momonosuke, you've been so brave." And then as he transforms into his dragon, he says, "I am not brave." Clarifying that his reaction here is he's not happy about people saying this stuff about him, because he doesn't believe it. Which fits with everything that Momonosuke said before and should have been the interpretation everybody, including myself, had from reading the fan translation. The fan translation was just less clear. But I suppose discussing this a little bit further, it has me wondering, what exactly would it take for Momonosuke to be convinced of his own bravery, right? So everyone thinks all these things about him, but he doesn't believe it. This becomes something important that must be accomplished. I really think that Momonosuke is honest with himself, and his expectations for himself are a lot greater than all of the sycophants and the retainers that surround him. They see an 8-year-old boy who is doing the best that he can, and Momonosuke sees an 8-year-old boy who is constantly failing to be what he needs to be. It makes me wonder if Momonosuke can actually accomplish what it is that he wants to accomplish in this arc. I've said for a while, and there's some people that don't agree with this or don't like it, but I think that Momonosuke travels with the strats for maybe a reason like this. Like he wants to, similar to Usopp, become a person that he feels is worthy of governing and ruling over Wano. I do think that this moment adds to that thought. Right now, if you ask me, nothing is going to satisfy Momonosuke aside from becoming Odin. Odin is the shining example of what Momonosuke strives to be as a person, not just in what he chooses to do, but in his nature itself. Even as he acts brave and does things and accepts the risks and whatnot, he would still rather be a person like Odin who doesn't feel fear. He may convince the entire island of his worthiness, but not himself. I suppose this is what I think about this moment. I think that there's a very strong possibility, and I think it was alluded to in this chapter. Momonosuke is going to do something probably game-changing. Him having his fruit is going to matter quite a lot. We also have things relating to his ability to control Zunisha, which I still think needs to play a more significant role in the story. All that being said, it may not satisfy Momonosuke himself, and that's how I read the chapter. As you guys should know, I do like the theory, even now, that Momonosuke travels with the strats after this arc, and then Hiyori becomes the shogun, at least temporarily. And Momonosuke's longer character arc really becomes something similar to the realization that Momonosuke can be himself and still be worthy. He doesn't have to be Odin. That's what everybody else sees, but he doesn't. And it's also because of his desire to be Odin where you can make a really strong argument for why he would want to travel with the strats, because that's what Odin did. Odin joined pirates, he went to go be free, and then he found the true history. Momonosuke might want to walk in his footsteps. But yeah, speaking of Odin, I want to elaborate on some of the Odin theories and make a new one, essentially, that I haven't really seen anybody talk about, or this is evidence that I think is intriguing to point out. I want to emphasize this, right? We saw the silhouette of the character helping the Scabbers in chapter 1004, and that person was very, very clearly not Odin. And so in this last chapter, Odin appears and everyone remarks like, "Whoa, Odin," and the fan base as well. But we still have this hanging question of who was the person, the silhouette that we saw in chapter 1004. This is part of the reason why I think that it's even more likely that, besides the reasons from the story, that Odin, this person is not Odin. There's some sort of trick going on in play. Why did this person heal the Scabbers but then not reveal their presence? They don't want the Scabbers to know that they are there, or they want to hide who they are. I actually think that Oda gave us a hint as to this person's identity from Kawamatsu. Kawamatsu says this: "I feel as though I saw, but it must have been a dream, because it couldn't possibly be true." We're supposed to believe that Kawamatsu here is talking about Odin, but we saw the silhouette of the person from chapter 1004 who looked nothing like Odin. So Kawamatsu may be referring to this original character. Kawamatsu specifically says it couldn't possibly be true. So if we're talking about characters such as Hiyori, the silhouette looked a lot like Hiyori. Kawamatsu wouldn't say this about Hiyori, because that could have possibly been true. We talked about the silhouette before, but I think that it makes it much more absurdly likely that the person that helped the Scabbers and was tending to their wounds was Toki. It looked exactly like both Hiyori and Toki, and I said at the time, 99% it's Hiyori, 1% it's Toki. In my opinion, Kawamatsu has now changed these odds quite a bit. I personally think it would be just like Oda and very clever to sort of hide that you're dropping this game-changing information from Kawamatsu by revealing another absurd character immediately after. But it doesn't change the fact that we saw a completely different character from Odin beforehand, and all of a sudden they're gone. 100% you can be sure that this is not unimportant information. But before we move on to the comments, hit that thumbs up if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, and remember to subscribe if you like my videos. A lot of you guys watch my videos, but you aren't subscribed, so it's free. I would appreciate it. But anyway, into the comments. One of the most interesting theories I heard about Odin is that it is related to an aspect of Toki's power we have yet to see. What if Toki could send someone temporarily into the future? That could really be Odin before his execution. That would also explain how Toki knows something important would happen in 20 years. She would be able to make short leaps into the future and return. Probably there would be limitations to the power, but it would be cool. Also, it would make for a heavy drama scene where Odin says goodbye to the Scabbers to face his own death in the past. What do you guys think? I'm just gonna be straight up honest with you, I am not messing with time travel. The way that it was designed before, that Toki could only go into the future, but not back into the past in any capacity, that works. Because when you can go back and forth in time, that's when you have all sorts of paradoxes, contradictions. You undermine the continuity of the universe. Odin goes forward in time and finds out that one character had a relationship with another character and had a child. He goes back into the past and then kills one of them, so this person no longer exists. So you've totally changed the timeline. In my opinion, guys, I think that the stories that do time travel well, they spend enormous amounts of energy making sure that it works. The story is sort of built all around time travel. That's like the main thing of the story. When it's willy-nilly thrown into the story just because, oh, we wanted to have some time travel in it like Harry Potter, it doesn't work. At least not when you spend any time thinking about it whatsoever, which is, quite honestly, what I do too much of. So yeah, I'm not speculating that. And if it happens, you guys can expect, and Oda can expect, a lot of people will be very unhappy. It's not worth it. So this leads into the next possibility in the next comment. I have a new theory. What if Chondro is a triple agent? Back in the past, in the Hour of Legend, it wasn't really Odin there in the boiling oil. It was Chondro's drawing. Chondro drew Odin to be in the execution instead of the real Odin, and the real Odin was teleported 20 years into the future by Toki. The major difference here is there's no backwards and then forwards, it's simply Toki using her abilities on Odin to send him into the future. This, for me, has different problems. First things first, just to get this out of the way, I think that it is incredibly unlikely that Chondro's drawing would be as strong as the real Odin and be able to survive 1 in boiling oil, 2 holding up all of his friends, and 3 be alive to the extent that Odin appeared to be during the Hour of Legends. Ryunosuke had a personality, but a very simple directive, like climb. If Contro's drawing ability had this level of power, then oh my god, he is... wow. Just think about that. That being said, the bigger problem here is what the damage that it does to Odin's great moment in the story. You've totally undermined the Hour of Legends. It's the hour of fake news. And he waited a little bit here in order to show up, which is annoying. You found the time to meet the Scabbers in the basement, but I mean, wouldn't you have been better suited fighting Kaido up on the roof with the supernova? Or maybe just show up, 15 minutes earlier. It's just one of those things that the more that you think about it, the more it annoys. At least it annoys me. So again, another thing that I don't want to speculate. Of course, if you really, really wanted to, you could try your darndest to try and explain this, find ways in which it might potentially work, rules in which you could operate based on, or exceptions, or, you could do that if you want to, but I have zero interest. Next comment, a man who defeated a mountain god and went toe-to-toe with Whitebeard and Roger dies to a frickin' bullet? Seems legit. The way that I understand Odin's death is that it took an enormous amount of willpower, or haki, in order to survive in the boiling oil for an hour. That's what made the moment so epic to me, is that he literally pushed himself to the very edges of what he was capable of doing. Odin isn't bulletproof. The only way that he would be is by using armament haki. But if he used up his willpower surviving for all that time, then yes, he could realistically die from a bullet. Again, I found the moment so powerful because Odin had accepted his death, and in fact he embraced it, which is a common theme in One Piece. Characters die with a smile on their face, because they don't fear the next great adventure. You've taken something away if he survived. Next comment, okay Joy Boy, you missed the most obvious thing. Odin was actually Thomas Teapot. Man, I want this to be true so much. So, this is a theory. I think Morge was the one who popularized this, but essentially, there's a teapot, and it's not Thomas Teapot, it's Tenguyama Hitetsu's teapot, which is confirmed to have the Inu Inu fruit, the dog fruit model Tanuki. And from Japanese mythology, a Tanuki is able to shapeshift. So essentially, the teapot, which is a Tanuki, is a mythical zone that can shapeshift and then became Odin. Odin was a teapot confirmed. Oh man, so a lot of people aren't going to like this, but personally I would love this. However, I had a conversation about this and pretty much debunks the idea. The Inu Inu fruit, Tanuki, which the teapot has, was confirmed in SBS, is a non-mythical variety. The mythical Tanuki is actually a fruit that was used in a One Piece video game. And so the way that these video games work is even non-canon fruits, this is very important to the story, non-canon fruits must be confirmed or approved by Oda and his staff. Essentially, if they're planning on using a devil fruit, you're not going to see it in a video game or in a movie. The fruit in question here, and the very same abilities, practically, was used in a video game, therefore is very much unlikely to exist in the world of One Piece. The teapot is, I hate to say it, is just a raccoon dog. And if I needed to look this up too, a raccoon dog is an actual thing. A legitimate, regular zone. Next comment, I'm in for the theory that the Red Scabbers actually died, and they're seeing Odin in the afterlife. That's the tragedy to close the third act, and also the reason for Toki Hiyori crying. This is one that I don't hate. I think that this can actually work. I would just say that from a personal preference standpoint, this falls lower on my list just because I want the Scabbers to live. I don't see their final moments being in this basement. But for sure, that would be a totally unexpected way to end this act. We all expect at this point, right, that the Scabbers are going to be alive, they're going to do something else in the story, and so for them to die when we assume that they haven't had their moment yet would be surprising and probably be somewhat emotional. Oda absolutely loves to do what it is that we're not expecting. Next comment, I don't think it's Odin. The clue is he says, you guys are so much older now. Half the Scabbers are actually only a few months older. I don't think this is an overlooked detail. I had several people point this out to me, and I would say that I agree. Odin saying this is weird because literally half of the Scabbers are not older. This leads me to believe that whoever is impersonating Odin may not have known that the Scabbers traveled forward in time. Of the characters that we know of, The only person here that wouldn't know this is, that's also a good idea, would be Onimaru. Onimaru was never present for any of these explanations. The Scabbard he directly knows and directly encountered was Kawamatsu, who is actually 20 years older. Perhaps he assumed that all the Scabbards, in some way or another, survived within Wano for 20 years. Just like Kawamatsu. Next comment, I'm not sold, but JB's ghost idea isn't too weird considering the Fire Festival is supposed to be a festival for the dead. So essentially I made an argument as for how or why Odin could be a ghost. There's enough here to make a legitimate speculation, as though Oda has been planning it the entire time. Fire Festival celebrates the dead is something I didn't mention in my review. Another thing is there was this whole plot point earlier within Wano of Law trying to convince Luffy that Kinemon was a ghost, and when he appeared like a ghost. Orochi's also made a point to mention on several occasions, or characters around Orochi, that he fears ghosts. So there's this ghost theme going on with Wano. I just can't make full sense of it from there. Like, Oda may do it, and I could see little bits of the story which all connect together, but as far as how it's actually going to happen, I mean, it's so far out of my league that I would just wait and see. Ultimately, this is why I never made a theory video on this topic, because I just don't think that I'm creative enough in order to make this into something wow. But I absolutely believe Oda could, if that's what Oda wants to do. Next comment, why everyone talking about Shinobu's fruit? It doesn't work on living things, that's Bonnie. Nobody talking about Hawkins' mysterious card that brings up potential, that's what's going to be used on Momo. So yeah, the Shinobu idea has serious holes in it because of how Shinobu has demonstrated the use of the fruit. You essentially have to assume that there's a way of using the fruit that Shinobu hasn't revealed yet. As far as being similar to Bonnie's powers, there's similar devil fruits that exist, so that's not a problem for me. It's more so the lack of direct evidence that Shinobu can actually age living things and not simply, decompose the world. This is actually one of the problems that I have with the One Piece wiki. Is I love the people that maintain and edit the wiki, but sometimes they treat non-canon information as canon. Just because Shinobu has demonstrated a fruit in a particular way doesn't mean that the fruit is bound by those rules. There is a definite possibility Shinobu's fruit is the same as Bonnie's, but better. Bonnie can age living things. Shinobu can age both living and non-living things. She has what essentially translates as the ripening devil fruit. I mean, it could happen. I feel like a lot of people get their information from the wiki, but for me personally, I would prefer if the wiki just straight up said what it is that we know and indicated when inferences were made, even if those inferences are likely. But then there's other times where there's obvious inferences that should be made and then it's nowhere to be found in the wiki. All of a sudden, that's not canon yet, which is mildly annoying. But I really do like this Hawkins idea, that's interesting. Next comment, no point using Shinobu to make Momonosuke older, as he would still be an 8-year-old child with the battle prowess of an 8-year-old child. This is something that I pointed out before and I definitely agree with, but in this case, the angle in which I was approaching this is more so we think that Momonosuke's artificial fruit is going to be important because that was what was telegraphed in the chapter. So one way that people are taking this is that Momonosuke as a dragon is going to be able to counteract Kaido's effects on Onigashima as a dragon, and Momonosuke may potentially save the Flower Capital. In order to do this, he may just need to be a bigger dragon, an older dragon. So some kind of temporary boost in age could be really cool, and Momonosuke wouldn't need a whole lot of, I don't think, experience in order to use his powers in this way. He would just need to produce clouds that are capable of counteracting Kaido's, which seems like a size thing. But all of this is obviously highly speculative. Personally, I've just seen this theory for a very, very long time, and now we're in the moment of truth where we expect Momonosuke to potentially do something soon, and who's with him? Shinobu is. Coincidence or not, you decide. Next comment, it was made clear this chapter that Momonosuke's devil fruit was a failure, yet he transformed. Maybe Vegapunk lied after considering it too powerful to give to the world government. Yeah, this was my initial thought as well. If we're looking for more evidence that Vegapunk is not on the world government's side, it's, what does he do with this technology that is very clearly very powerful, much more powerful than any of the Smile created so far. I mean, there's mythical properties to Momonosuke's artificial devil fruit. Also, how would you know that it's a failure if nobody tried to eat it? Riddle me that one. Why didn't Vegapunk give the world government this fruit? Maybe Vegapunk didn't want them to have it. It was too dangerous and or powerful. How much other technology has Vegapunk come up with and just not shared? A worthy question in my opinion. I'm still kind of waiting for the switch on the Pacifista that will turn them against the world government. And remember guys, Vegapunk went out of his way to program Kuma or PX0 to go defend the Straw Hat ship. Why did Vegapunk program Kuma to defend the Straw Hat's ship? Next comment, nobody's mentioning how Marco held Queen. Where are King and Perospero? I mean, we were just talking about this in the last chapter's comments video, and in the last chapter's regular review. What is Perospero going to decide to do, right? Oda, it's often, I think, really hard to predict him because you don't know when he's going to decide, hey, I want to fool everybody. So he makes you think that Perospero is going to choose to fight Marco, and then Perospero encounters King and is like, screw it, I'm fighting King. Either way, last chapter was really interesting and maybe supports this idea. Marco is free to restrain Queen. Where is Perospero and King? I think that this is a very, very fair observation. It could amount to nothing, but it could be something. Last time we wondered where an important character was, Queen, it turned out that Oda intentionally left them off panel to be somewhere else, relatively unexpected. Next comment, I've got a feeling that the Strat Grand Fleet is going to go up exponentially after this, with the ex-Beast Pirates and the Samurai of Wano joining in. If you guys haven't caught on to this, this is the direction that the story is going. By the time that we get to some climactic final battle, Luffy is going to be the king of the pirates, and his crew and his allied captains and fleets is going to consist of pretty much everybody that they have defeated or encountered along the way. All these Beast Pirates that Chopper just saved, they're joining the alliance. The question actually we should have is who's going to lead them, because all the factions have leaders. Like for instance, we speculated the Big Mom Pirates are going to join the Strat Grand Fleet at some point in time. Their leader probably is going to be Katakuri. So Katakuri is going to be part of the Strat Grand Fleet, or if not the Grand Fleet, it's going to be an allied captain. I know these things aren't exactly the same, but for the purposes of the story, they can be considered synonymous. In the case of the Beast Pirates, I really don't think that the Strats are going to convert King, Queen, and Jack into an ally. So actually I'm thinking about Yamato leading the Beast Pirates after this arc is over, which actually puts a little bit of a wrench in the idea that Yamato joins the crew. I'm just going to throw that out there. The Samurai of Wano, on the other hand, is going to fall more in line with the various countries that the Strats have saved along the way, which will probably also join them in some sort of final battle or be important later on in the story, like Dressrosa, Alabasta. All these places are, at some point, they're going to put up a fight, and they're going to be there because world events are going to matter to them too. So the samurai won't be pirates, but they will be allies. Next comment, there's a couple things I haven't seen you or other theorists talk about lately. What will Appu do after seeing the Beast Pirates rebel? He was tasked to guard the antidote and failed. He looks pretty beaten up after fighting X-Drake. What will happen to him? For me, Appu will just join the alliance to save his ass since he's realizing that he's on the losing side. The same thing can be said about Hawkins, who's been absent this whole time. I think Appu and Hawkins' treachery is pretty well telegraphed at this point in time, and I've thought from the beginning that all the supernova at some point in time are going to join hands, even some of the supernova that aren't here yet, in order to fight Kaido. But yeah, Appu should definitely know that he is absolutely screwed. And it just comes down to when he decides to say, okay, well, I know this, and it's time to fight. Hawkins, on the other hand, is a little bit more interesting to me because I don't think that the cards are ever going to say that Luffy is 100% likely to defeat Kaido, or that's the more probable event. I'm not sure if that'll ever happen, but I think that Luffy's inability to fall to 0% might be what convinces Hawkins to side with him. I think most everybody's forgotten about this, but we haven't seen Hawkins much in ONIGASHIMA, but one of the last times that we did, he predicted that a certain man's chance of survival the next day was 1%. There's obviously various theories as to who this was, but for me, the idea that always made the most sense was that he was referring to Luffy, because Luffy's chance of death is never 100%. he's always got a chance. So that felt in line with Hawkins' readings on Luffy in the past. And he made this reading at the very start of the battle, and it makes sense to read Luffy's fortune if the battle just started and you knew he was there. So if you assume this to be true, you kinda know where the battle's gonna go the next day. It wasn't a prediction of victory, it was merely a prediction of survival. But to read this comment further, he brings up the numbers. Neither Oda nor anyone else have shown or talked about them in ages. There are still numbers like 1, 2, 3, 6, and 9 that haven't been shown. Why hasn't Oda introduced them yet? What impact will they make in this battle? This is a great question that I don't have an answer for either. I think that you can only expect that with unrevealed factions such as the Big Mom Pirates and the Numbers, their later introduction is going to prove to be potentially game-changing or put the allies in a tough situation. That's just how I read the flow of the story. Like, all these good things are happening, players are switching sides, but it's these people that Oda has sort of off-screen for now that are going to come back and make this not feel like an imminent win. Next comment, JB, I think it's worth a focus to look at the thematic device Oda keeps bringing up. Pirates are treacherous. This keeps surfacing from the Beast Pirates. Is it an element of what makes the Strat Pirates different? Or is it a serious look into the psyche of Kaido that he was betrayed? Kaido has to know forcing subservience isn't going to last. But is it treachery? Will he see his crew switching sides that way, despite his personal methods for gaining crew members? Will the Strat Pirates crew's loyalty and the strength of those bonds be what finally breaks Kaido? That and Linlin turning on him at any rate. So there's some things to unpack in this comment. I think that this was a really good comment. First off, it's an interesting question, right? Does Kaido look at all these factions switching sides as betrayal? I think that he does. I also think that he doesn't care. I think that Kaido assumes betrayal. So like, for instance, what Queen did in this last chapter, turning various crew members into ice Onis, that's probably also betrayal. Kaido and the Beast Pirates, the higher-ups, they just do not care because that's how they see pirates operating. That's what they expect. And they probably think that you're an idiot if you don't expect it. Kaido would never have a moment like Whitebeard in Marineford with Squirtle because Kaido doesn't trust, I don't think that he trusts anybody. I think it's been made pretty abundantly clear that Kaido does expect Big Mom to betray him. It's just a question of when. As he said to Big Mom earlier when she started talking about road poneglyphs, he says, it's too early for you to betray me, come on now. And it's because of this that future betrayal is relatively insignificant, at least in terms of its effect on Kaido himself. Which is why I lean towards Big Mom not betraying Kaido. It's gotta happen in a surprising way. So the Big Mom Pirates and Big Mom's children betray Big Mom, which by happenstance and circumstance ends up betraying Kaido. Kaido's like, well, this is awkward. But in this way it happens in a way that even Kaido doesn't expect. But yeah, thematically, I think the idea that Oda is playing with is that there's going to be all these betrayals during this war, and it's all going to support Kaido's headcanon of what it means to be a pirate, what to expect of other pirates, pirates betray other pirates. But at the end of the day, the Strat Pirates and those that they have connections to and with are going to prove him wrong. Like earlier in Wano, Oda has thrown out the idea of what exactly is the Allies going to do when it looks like they are going to lose. I still expect this is going to happen. And so it's going to be, well, Kid is going to run away, right? Law is going to run away, right? They're going to betray you, Luffy, because they're pirates. And then they don't. And of course, the Strat Pirates won't betray any of their allies as well. But yeah, I think that it's pretty clear at this point in time that Kaido had something occur in his past which has convinced him of this mindset. He was betrayed or he was involved in some kind of betrayal. I personally think that Rocksteady Zebek was betrayed. And that's eventually, when Oda gets back to the theme and sort of explaining Kaido, that's going to be the incident that he focuses on, which has shaped Kaido's worldview. Next comment, I'm still waiting for the legend Oda said was going to appear in this arc. You might end up waiting for a very long time because I'm still convinced that the legend was Im-sama. I'm not going to break it down here in this comment, but essentially when this interview came out and this quote happened, it was before the Reverie, and a lot of people assumed that Oda was talking about Wano, but by the wording of it, it could be purposefully misleading. I do not think that it is a coincidence that only a couple months after Oda dropped this interview, Im-sama was introduced during the Reverie. I think Im-sama was lurking legend. But I certainly won't complain if I'm wrong and there happens to be another. Next comment, I'm just trying to figure out what's up with the sounds like chickens in the background. So if you guys don't know, there's chickens in the background of every single one of my videos. No, I don't live in a farm, I just have a larger backyard and 20 chickens. It gets tiresome having to re-record every line when the chickens decide to be noisy or roosters crow. I've got turkeys as well. The turkeys are too loud. I usually re-record them, but it's kind of like Where's Waldo? Chickens are somewhere in every single one of my videos. You just gotta find it. And finally, we have the last comment. For all those doubting the success of the Alliance and the victory of the Strats in Wano, remember the words of Mihawk during the battle in Marineford. And that is exactly what is slowly happening in this arc. One by one, all the Strats will show their greatness together. With all their new allies, it's Kaido and Big Mom that will fail, not the Strats. I mean, it wouldn't be One Piece, and it wouldn't be Oda if there wasn't a great debate. But I just want to make this very clear, just because the Strats might be gaining allies during this fight, and just because it might look like they're going to win, doesn't mean that they're going to win. A great example of this is Sabaody, right? The Strats made an ally of Kuma, and Kuma was, he played a pivotal role in that arc. But did they win? No. Kuma merely as an ally saved them from death. Right, I don't think that we need to say this more than once. Kaido is going to lose. Probably sooner rather than later, and the Strats and Luffy is going to be a big reason why. But for me, it's more interesting. It's important to find out how. What are the twists and turns in the story? This is one of those things that I imagine might get pretty technical depending on what we get, just because people might claim that they're right no matter how the story unfolds, just because we have different definitions and views on what constitutes a defeat, what constitutes the raid on Onigashima ending and failing. But I suppose lost in all this conversation is accurately describing what I want, and what I want is a serious and emotional arc that, it makes me feel something, and it makes me feel scared. And we leave it with a sense of unease. Either a victory that doesn't feel like a victory, or a defeat in the middle of the battle before the victory. So far, Wano's been really, really good, but I think it's going to miss the mark if everything just happens to go right and the Straw Hats win. Don't get me wrong, this is the majority of arcs in One Piece, right? This is the template which Oda has followed throughout the story, and throughout the story, we haven't had a problem with this. And maybe this is partly misconstrued expectations, but this is around the time in the story when we get to the end, when you expect, Oda to do everything that he didn't want to do or has been saving up for the entire story, to really take the story to the next level. Not just a template of go to the next island, are we going to defeat the opponent? Are we not? But we know that we're going to defeat them, and then, everybody survived for the most part, and we move on to the next island, and it's happy-go-lucky. Like, this is the time to take the story to the next level. And I want to feel that. There are some who might say, why do you expect One Piece to change? But this all exists within the flow of a story. Obviously, you have, a story within every arc, but then there's the grand flow from arc to arc. We have to reach a point of crisis. But anyway, guys, that is pretty much all I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.